Welcome to the first video for Unit 8. When you're done taking notes on this video, you're going to take Edmodo Chapter 8 Quiz 2 that go along with this video. All right, so let's get started. So hunger is both a physiological and psychological motivator. Okay, look at that. That dog's hungry. That's just cute. I found that. I thought you'd like it. All right, so what triggers hunger? Hunger is something, it's physical. So three things trigger hunger: your stomach contractions, body chemistry, which are your hormones, and the hypothalamus part of your brain. All right, your stomach contractions, or those hunger pangs that you get, send signals to your brain making you aware that you're hungry. It's like your stomach grumbles and you're like, hey, brain, I'm hungry, feed me. But again, the stomach isn't the only factor, all right, because you have these other things that tell you that you're hungry. A Washburn study actually showed that hunger was just partially related to the stomach because they did stuff with people that had their stomachs removed, still felt hunger. All right, we used to think that, wow, the stomach is what told you you're hungry, and even when you don't have a stomach, you still feel hungry. That's fascinating. Well, it's because of the other two factors as well. So body chemistry, your hormones, all right? We talked about in class that your body is always seeking glucose, sugar. It needs that to function. The hormone insulin converts glucose into fat, which is usable energy that you then burn off. As you burn that off, it lowers glucose levels in your body. When glucose levels in your body drop, hunger is going to increase because your body's actively going to start seeking more glucose. Like, hey, I'm running low. All right, I need to get more in order to function. It's like when your gas tank gets low and the gas light comes on. All right, you need to get more. All right, you don't notice those changes consciously though. It kind of just happens and the physiological part starts to take over. Levels of glucose are monitored by neurons in your stomach, liver, and intestines. So like little sensors that go off when they're running on empty. Then they send that neural impulse to the hypothalamus. All right. There are two parts to the hypothalamus that actually control hunger. They do two different things. Just when you thought we were done learning about parts of the brain, here we go. We have more. On top of parts of the brain, there are parts to parts of the brain. All right, so let's break it down more. The lateral hypothalamus, or LH, is what makes you hungry. Right, so that's what tells you you're hungry. If this part of the brain is injured or destroyed, you're most likely to starve because you're just going to waste away because you don't realize that you're hungry. All right. On the other side, the ventromedial hypothalamus, or VMH, is what doesn't tell you you're always hungry, and it doesn't tell you to stop eating. So if this part of the brain is damaged or destroyed, an animal will continue to eat excessively. So that's what happened to this little rat here on this picture. Odds are, for animal testing, they probably destroyed the ventromedial hypothalamus to see what it would do, and this rat just kept eating and got really, really fat. All right. So that's what if I were to diagram that out to what it looks like in a rat's brain. Here's the lateral hypothalamus and the ventromedial. And all of that collectively is the hypothalamus. All right. So how does this actually work? There are two theories to how the hypothalamus actually works. The first one is called set point, all right, which is where the hypothalamus acts like a thermostat. Okay, so it acts like a thermostat. So which means you're meant to be within a certain weight range. That is your set point that you are supposed to weigh. All right, if you fall below your set point, all right, so if you start losing weight, your body is going to increase the amount of hunger that you feel, telling you, hey, you need to eat more to get back to your set point. And it's going to decrease the amount of energy that you expend, right, because you need to hold on to that to remain at your set point. This is your basic metabolic rate, right? It's the energy expenditure part. All right. And the opposite happens if you go over your set point weight. So if you are over your set point weight, you're going to your body is going to decrease hunger. So your hypothalamus is going to decrease the amount of hunger that you feel because you don't need to eat anymore. You need to burn off what you have. and then it's going to increase the amount of energy that you are expending because you need, again, to get that weight off to get back to your set point. So that's one theory behind how the hypothalamus works. The other one is called leptin. That's a protein produced by bloated fat cells. And they say that the hypothalamus senses a rise in leptin levels and will curb your eating and increase activity based on that. All right, so those are two theories as to how those two parts of the hypothalamus really work. All right, the psychology of hunger. Some people tend to feel hungry and eat due to external factors. So people whose eating is triggered more by the presence of food than actual internal factors. So sometimes you might feel hungry because you just see this picture of Doritos. You're staring at this. You weren't hungry initially. Your stomach wasn't growling. You were fine. But now that you see this, you're hungry because it's an external factor. Just seeing it can make you hungry. Some people eat by the clock. How many of you eat at a certain time? Right? And if you haven't eaten by that certain time, you'll start to feel hungry. All right. Picture this. All right. If you had first lunch first semester and now you have third or fourth lunch second semester, maybe you start to feel hungry around the time you used to have lunch the first time around, right? Because your body is so used to getting food then that you are eating by the clock, right? You're not necessarily hungry, but your body's telling you you're hungry because it's used to being fed at that time. Social eating, you're eating at an event because you're expected to and everybody else is. Stress and depression can also change your eating habits. It make you eat more or less or different types of food. And other eating cues such as holidays or TV watching. Taste preferences. Right. I found this interesting. Food tastes better when we chew and we chew less when you are hungry. All right, so food tastes better and you chew less when you are hungry. So that's at the beginning of a meal. Food tastes worse when you chew more and when you're not hungry, so at the end of a meal. And I also thought it was weird that the better a food tastes, the less time you actually leave it in your mouth. So think about when the better the food tastes, you're eating something you really like, you eat it really quick, you scarf it down, you don't take time to savor it. All right. But those foods that you really don't like, odds are you chew them really slowly and you have that really weird look on your face. All right. When you would think it would be the opposite. All right. Other things with hunger, taste preference, is it biological or is it cultural? Body chemistry and environmental factors influence not only when you feel hungry, but also what you're going to feel hungry for. So your cravings are going to be different for different things in different cultures. Interesting fact, hot cultures like hot spices. Countries with climates that are hot use more bacteria inhibiting spices and in their meals. So think about dishes that you eat that are spicy. All right, what culture is that coming from? Is it from a country that's in a hot climate? There you go, that explains that. All right, it's an interesting fact. All right, psychological hunger factors. They come from learned associations between food and other stimuli, such as snacking while watching television, sociocultural influences such as depression, dislike of body image, or low self-esteem, and then personality traits. You may be at great risk for overeating, as well as developing serious eating disorders, such as overeating when you're stressed, going on food binges, or starving yourself. Speaking of which, we're getting into eating disorders. Anorexia nervosa, or just anorexia. It's an eating disorder in which a normal weight person diets and becomes significantly underweight, yet they still feel fat and will continue to starve. They still feel fat. They still see themselves as fat. They're not seeing, when they look in the mirror, the same picture that you're seeing. They're not seeing skin and bones, right? They're seeing, I'm fat. I need to get rid of this weight. Bulimia is, I don't want to say it's the opposite, but it's an eating disorder characterized by episodes of overeating. So you're not dieting, you are overeating, usually really fatty foods, high in calories, right? You're eating a lot. So you binge and then you purge and then you get it all out of your system. You do this with vomiting or using laxatives to kind of speed that stuff through your system so you can get it out. or fasting, or maybe they do excessive exercising just to burn the weight off faster, because after binge eating like that, taking all that in, you just feel heavy and they want to get it out, and they do this like, to an extreme. So it's not healthy because your body's not able to absorb any of the nutrients. All right. Obesity is characterized by excessively overweight. Obesity increases the risks for health issues like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, which is high blood pressure, arthritis, and back problems. Right, so the more overweight you are, the more at risk you are for those things. All right, reasons for eating disorders and common misconceptions. All right, sexual abuse. Childhood sexual abuse does not cause eating disorders. Family. Younger generations develop eating disorders when raised in families in which weight is an excessive concern. So if it's an excessive concern for your parents, you're probably picking up on that, and it becomes an excessive concern for you as well, which kind of puts you in danger of developing an eating disorder. Genetics. Twin studies show that eating disorders are more likely to occur in identical twins rather than fraternal twins. Right. Are these disorders cultural? Well, when it comes to body image, we've probably all heard this before. Western cultures, yeah, so that would be us, tends to overemphasize thin body image more than other cultures. And cultures who put more emphasis on appearance have higher rates of eating disorders. All right, so in summary, eating behavior has all three of these factors: biological, which is your appetite hormones, those hunger pangs we talked about, what goes on in the hypothalamus; psychological influences, which is the sight and smell of a variety of tastes and foods, and memory of the last time you ate, in your mood. That's all psychological. It goes towards hunger. And finally, cultural factors, culturally learned taste preferences, and things like that. All right, the psychology of sex. Hunger responds to a need. So if we don't eat, we die. But sex is not a need. We don't need it, and if we don't have it, we're not going to die. All right. So the scientific study of sex. The first major study of sex in the late 1940s, early 1950s by Alfred Kinsey interviewed over 17,000 people concerning their sexual behavior. Now again, think back to 1940s and 50s, kind of more conservative. This is just not a thing to talk about. But basically, he rates behavior on a scale of 0 to 6, 0 being excessively heterosexual and 6 being exclusively homosexual. And I have a quote from him here I thought was rather interesting. All right. Males do not represent two discrete populations, heterosexual and homosexual. The world is not to be divided into sheep and goats. Not all things are black, nor are all things white. So that a lot of people fell on some type of spectrum in between 0 and 6. All right. Sexual motivation. There's something, so sex is a physiological based motive like hunger, but it is more affected by learning and values. So again, it is not a need per se. All right. Sexual response cycle. You're going to need to know this. The 4 stages of sexual responding described by Masters and Johnson are excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. All right. So, and also William Masters and Virginia Johnson in the 1950s, there's a show called Masters of Sex, and it's all about their studies. I don't think any of you should actually be watching it. But they observed sexual arousal and orgasm to learn about typical patterns of human response during sexual stimulation. Their findings found that in the excitement stage, right, the physiological response was your genitals filled with blood and lubricate, and they're ready for intercourse. Breathing and pulse become rapid at the plateau. All right, changes related to excitement, and you reach a peak. And then orgasms, which are contractions all over the body, and sexual release. And finally, resolution. All right, enlarged genitals release blood, and males will go through a refractory period that's similar to how a neuron recharges, and that women actually resolve slower than men do. Sexual orientation. This refers to a person's preference for emotional and sexual relationships with individuals of the same sex, other sex, and or either sex. Right, the origins of sexual orientation. Sexual orientation results from a complex interplay of biological, cognitive, and environmental factors. Both will appear early in life, and individuals have little to no choice in their sexual orientation. And I'll explain how in a little bit. All right, the brain and sexual orientation. There is actually a slight difference in the brain. The size of the anterior hypothalamus, so another part of the hypothalamus, is smaller, and the anterior commissure, is larger in homosexual men. So that's the only difference they could find, like actually physically in the brain. All right, genes and sexual orientation. A number of reasons suggest that homosexuality may be due to genetic factors. 1, family. Homosexuality seems to actually run in families. 2, twin studies. Homosexuality is more common in identical twins than fraternal twins. 3, fruit flies. Genetic engineers can genetically manipulate females to act like males during courtship and males to act like females. So if they can do it to fruit flies and it works genetically, then they assume so for people as well. Hormones and sexual orientation. Prenatal hormones, so this is like before you're born, prenatal, affect sexual orientations during critical periods of your fetal development, usually between 2 to 5 months after conception. In animals, it's been shown that testosterone exposure to a fetus results in female sheep showing homosexual behavior. So exposure to testosterone, at least for female sheep, shows that they have homosexual behavior. In humans, it's been found that the female hormone estrogen, exposure to a male or female fetus results in attraction to men. So in a female, all right, if the fetus is exposed to estrogen, all right, the male, and doesn't matter if it's a male baby or a female baby, if they're exposed to estrogen, they're going to be attracted to men. All right. Now, moving into social needs and social motivation. I put this clip here from Castaway. Man is a social animal. That is a quote by Aristotle. Separation from others increases our need to belong. So think back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All right, in Castaway, Tom Hanks actually suffers from social starvation, which is why he starts talking to a volleyball. All right, how does it aid in surviving? Social bonding boosts our ancestors' survival rates, and these bonds led to the following. 1, protecting against predators, especially for the young. 2, procuring food. 3, reproducing the next offspring. Okay, and again, remember Maslow's hierarchy of motives. All right, I have them right here in case you don't have them in your notes. All right, the next thing that all 3 of these top tiers here. All right, so these 2 are biological. All right, and now we're talking about the top 3 tiers, social. Okay, all right, belongingness. Let's pick up there. You want to belong. You have a need to belong. It colors your thinking and your emotions. You want to belong. It's just normal. Social acceptance. A sense of belonging with others increases your self-esteem. Social segregation will actually decrease it. Maintaining relationships. You resist breaking social bonds, even bad ones. Abusive relationships, gangs, things like that. That's why people still stay in them, because they want to maintain relationships to feel a sense of belonging. Ostracism. Social exclusion leads to demoralization, depression, and at times, very nasty behavior. So ostracism is just someone who has been excluded from a group. And again, you want to feel a sense of belongingness because it fortifies your health. People who tend to have friends appear happier and healthier. So it is actually beneficial. All right, motivation at work. The healthy life, said Sigmund Freud, is filled by love and work. So also organizational psychologist, look, B.F. Skinner, we've talked about him a lot. Achievement motivation, this is something we're going to talk about now, is defined as a desire for significant accomplishment. So Skinner devised a daily discipline schedule that led him to become 20th century's most influential psychologist. So not only does he deal with operant conditioning, but also achievement motivation, which is by definition this stuff here. I'm just going to put all of it up at once. All right, people who have low achievement motivation prefer very easy or very difficult tasks, one way or the other. They're not really in the middle. Failure is unlikely, if not embarrassing. All right, so if it's a really difficult difficult task and they fail, it's not going to be embarrassing because it was really hard. People with high achievement motivation prefer moderately difficult tasks, and success is attainable yet attributed to their skill and effort. So they tend to do a little bit harder things or middle of the road type things, and their success is because, wow, you put a lot of effort into this, not, oh, you did something really easy, you couldn't fail, or you failed because it was really hard. All right, you achieved because you really worked hard. Does high achievement motivation mean success in life? Why, yes, it does. All right, so you want high achievement motivation. So you want to do this thing. Okay. All right. The need to master challenges, outperform others, meet high standards, or accomplish something leads you to feel successful. All right. So you want to strive to have high achievement motivation. Attitude towards work. People have different attitude towards work. Some take it as a job. If someone calls it a job, they're kind of referring to it being a necessity, so a way to make money. If they refer to what they do as a career, what they mean is that it's an opportunity to advance one's position, one position to another. And 3, if they refer to their work as a calling, it's fulfilling a social useful activity. All right, so if you want to find out how people feel about work, take a survey of 10 people. Don't ask your teachers. If they start talking about their work and they refer to it as a job, a career, or a calling, you get to find out their attitude about work, okay? Because it's all right here, like how they feel about it. All right, flow and rewards. Flow is the experience between no work and a lot of work. Flow marks immersion into one's work. So when you're not working, or you're apathetic, or you're underwhelmed, or you're lazy, things like that. All right, and then a lot of work on the other end, which is where you become anxious and overwhelmed, and you have flow in between. All right, don't confuse this with optimum arousal. All right, that's different. All right. Oops. People who flow in their work, like artists, dancers, composers, and so on, are driven less by extrinsic rewards like money, praise, and promotion, and more by intrinsic rewards. Flow experiences boost our sense of self-esteem, competence, and well-being. All right. Work and satisfaction. In industrialized countries, work and satisfaction actually go hand in hand. All right. So percentage of people that are satisfied or very satisfied with life. All right. This is a survey, a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. How satisfied are you with work? So you tend to see more industrialized countries, work satisfaction goes hand in hand. So I thought that was kind of neat. All right, industrial and organizational psychology. We learned about this way back in Unit 1 when we talked about different subfields of psychology. This is the field that focuses on how to help organizations recruit, select, and compensate and train employees. The object is to utilize the human factor in organization to increase productivity. Industrial organizational psychologists, or IO psychologists, they are applied psychologists. They apply psychological principles to the workplace. 1, via personal psychology, studies the principles of selecting and evaluating workers. Or 2, organizational psychology, studies how work environments and management styles influence work motivation, satisfaction, and productivity. All right, so how do you measure achievement? I'm going to see if I can get some of this stuff together in class for us to do. So how do you actually measure achievement? Well, you could do it through different assessments, but one way that they found out with psychology is something called the thematic apperception test, or TAT. I'll just say TAT for short because it's easier to say. People are shown ambiguous pictures. So remember, if it's an ambiguous picture, it means it can be interpreted in more than one way. And they're told to write a story about what's happening in the picture. A standard scoring system is then used to determine the amount of achievement imagery in those people's stories, and to show if they have a need for achievement, and if that achievement motivation is high or low, depending on the detail within their story and what their story is about. So if you look at some of these, so these are literally some of the actual pictures that you will see, and you'd have to come up with a story based off of that one image. And then based off your response and like your tone and how you respond, is it positive, is it negative in your story, they come up with criteria with how to score this to see if you have high or low achievement motivation. So the story content usually reveals the subject's attitudes, fantasies, wishes, and inner conflicts and view of the outside world. The story's structure typically reflects the subject's, so your feelings, assumptions about the world, and understanding of attitudes of pessimism and optimism. When is achievement motivation learned? Well, it tends to be learned in early childhood, especially from parents. High achievement motivation seems to stem from parents who encourage their child to read or to try difficult tasks, especially new ones, give praise and other rewards for success, and encourage your child to find ways to succeed rather than merely complain about failure. All right, so if either you want to have high achievement motivation, or in the future you want your children to have high achievement motivation, these are the types of things to do that they found that work. All right. More general cultural influences can also affect the levels one has on achievement motivation, such as children's books, how much the culture values achievement. So those types of things also go into if you have high or low achievement motivation. All right, so now last thing we're going to talk about real quick is conflict. What will you do if a conflict comes to you? Well, it depends on what type of conflict it is. The first one being approach. All right, so if it's an approach conflict, if you're approaching, it means positive. If you're avoiding, it's negative. All right, so an approach conflict is what you must choose between two equally attractive options, so two positive things. So do you want to, like in this example, do you want to go to a movie, right, with friends or significant other? Or do you want to go to a birthday party? They're both attractive options. They're both positives, and you have to pick between one. As the importance of choice increases, all right, so does the difficulty of you making a decision. So they're both positive, and the more positive they are, the harder it makes that decision. Avoidance, again, these are negative. Avoidance conflict. One has to choose between two equally unattractive options. They're both things that you don't want to do, and you have to pick one. So for example here, would you rather stay inside and vacuum, or would you rather go outside and mow the lawn? They're both things that you probably really don't want to do, but you have to pick one. They are very difficult to resolve and often creates intense emotions, such as choosing between, let's say, declaring bankruptcy or selling your family's house. They're both not attractive options. You don't want to do either one, but which one are you going to choose? And that example that I gave you is if you were in that situation of declaring bankruptcy or selling your house, that's a hard decision to make because they're both negative options. You can also have approach avoidance conflict. So one thing's positive, one thing's negative. This is where there are both appealing and negative aspects to the decision that you have to make. All right, so both decisions you have to make have pros and they both have cons. All right, if you watch HGTV like I do, I'm obsessed with it. The show Love It or List It could be an example. All right, so it's either they redesign and remodel, renovate your current home to make it what you want. All right, so and you choose to love it, or are you going to list it and you're going to get a new house that a realtor showed you that has everything you want. You don't have to make any repairs. All right, you're going to have positives on both ends. The one, you don't have to move, your house is new, newer because it's been remodeled. All right, but maybe they didn't get to give you everything you wanted. All right, or you move to another location, which you may not necessarily want because it's kind of a hassle, but you get more of the house that you wanted. It has everything and you didn't need to do anything. Okay, so that's would be an example of approach avoidance. Multiple approach avoidance is it's pretty much approach avoidance, but you have more than two options. All right, so one has to choose between both attractive and negative aspects of all available alternatives. So the example I put here is just between a bunch of different colleges. All right, there's pros and cons to each one. There's more than two, all right, and you have to choose between them. So multiple approach avoidance conflict. All right, and I put them all up here. All right, I hit the 30-minute marker with my video again. Really sorry, but I'm gonna cut it off here, and I'll be posting the quiz later on tonight. All right, so thanks for stopping by.